So we're going to go ahead and get started. This should be a lot of fun for at least one of us, hopefully all of us. My name is Jenny Bramble, and the talk you have just walked into is, seems good enough to me, but they wouldn't let me put a shrug emoji in the actual talk title. We're going to be talking a little bit about working with testers to de-risk Elixir upgrades. Mostly this is about any kind of major regression effort, but if you put Elixir in the title, ElixirConf will accept the talk. Like I said, my name is Jenny Bramble. I am the Director of Quality Engineering at a company called Papa. We encourage healthier living through human connection by bringing together people that have needs like pick your medicine up from the store or take me to my doctor's office with gig economy workers who can help them do that. It is awesome, and we're hiring. My pronouns are she and her. I am a tester by both nurture and nature. I grew up coming into a support kind of role, and then I kind of evolved into a super support kind of role, and then I realized I couldn't make any money in support. So they were like, what about quality assurance? It's like support, but no one yells at you. Spoiler alert, they still yell at you sometimes. My pronouns are she and her, and I do have a plethora of different cat stickers, if that's a thing you're into. So I don't think I need to convince anyone in the room that keeping our ecosystem up to date is a good thing. Does anybody disagree? We're all in? Okay, good, because the talk would be much longer if you didn't agree with me. And for the folks that are following online at home, I do have chat open, so you can drop questions in there. What problem do we want to solve? We are all at the conference for a reason. For some of us, it's water slides and the lazy river. For some of us, we want to network and get to know people and meet Jenny Bramble. But a lot of us were here to solve a problem, to talk about new technology and say, hey, what's out there that could help me personally? So I want to take a couple of minutes here and talk to you about a problem that I've seen in my years of testing and what I think the solution is. It's going to be super fun. What problem do we want to solve? Upgrades are terrifying. Oh my gosh, they are so risky, and the developers keep saying we have to do them. Oh my gosh, no one understands how risky this is. Everyone has a different idea of the risk. Regression testing takes forever. Oh my gosh, the last thing I want to do is spend an entire week logging into the system over and over and over. And it uses up a lot of my resources. My test team could be doing so many things like writing automation or doing anything that's not regression testing. And if we mess up, it could be real bad. I don't know how he got that sticker on him. So how do we make it less risky? How do we take this big, terrifying thing and make it into not a big, terrifying thing? I have a super easy answer. Do less testing. That's the talk, y'all. I will be in the bar later. But seriously, how do we do less testing? How do we make these less risky? It's a human problem. Are upgrades actually that risky? What do y'all think? Yes? No? Yes, they're risky? No, they're not risky? I see a lot of different answers. Depends on how long it's been. Yes, good call on that one. It also depends on what we're changing, what we're using in our ecosystem. It turns out the unknown is what's scary. The unknown is what's risky. And it's a human problem. a lot of this is about perception. It's about the things that we think and the things that we claim and the kind of the cultural ways that we talk about some of this stuff definitely impact it. So I believe that we de-risk upgrades by testing the smallest set of features that give us confidence to move forward. This is going to sound crazy. The more testing we do, the more risk we're introducing into a system, because it is taking longer to get from the tippity taps to the users. Long testing cycles introduce risk into our ecosystem. So I want to find the test cases or scenarios that give us the highest amount of confidence that our stakeholders' expectations will be met and minimize any negative impacts. You're never going to get rid of all of them. You're always going to have to accept some risk. But we can find a set of test cases and scenarios and use cases that let us move forward in a safe sort of way. Anyone disagree so far? Sweet. Y'all are great. That seems obvious, right? I mean, we test it, we release it, we're good. Woo! How'd you get into the ElixirConf with that abstract, Jenny? Don't worry, there's more. We're only 5 minutes into this bad boy. When we're talking about upgrades, everyone instantly says, oh, no, no, no. We don't have the tolerance for the risk. We don't have the time. Did you see the feature set product wants out? That and upgrade? No, absolutely not. So obviously, the upgrade is the least important thing, so we're just not going to do that. And then we get into the situation where it's been a while. When we talk about it, we say, well, we have to test everything. What if we miss something? What if there is something we don't test and it's awful? So I want to talk to you about, that is directly in opposition with my personal testing philosophy, which I like to call good enough testing. Yeah, my parents were a little neglectful, so good enough feels great. Sorry, Mom, you were great. So we've heard perfection is the enemy of done. Perfection is the enemy of good. And yet we approach this stuff and we say, test everything. Make sure there's no bugs. It must be perfect. We never say perfect because you're not supposed to say perfect. But we say perfect. We say test everything. Hit all the edge cases. Is there something we're missing? This is so awful. Perfection kills testing. Perfection is how we get to a place where it's taking us a week to do regression, where it's taking us months and months to get a simple upgrade out. It's awful. I look at my test team and I say, when I first arrived at my company, it's like 8 hours? You have an 8-hour regression test for our mobile app. I'm going to go scream in the woods and I will be back. Because a regression test should take us 2 hours maximum, including data setup. And a lot of that is by looking at what we're pushing out, looking at what we're doing, and having that conversation between developers and testers about what we want to do. So here's what I think good enough testing is. We thoughtfully and intentionally craft test scenarios by looking at what we're actually doing. Not what we think we're doing, what we're actually doing, what's actually changing, and how it's going to actually have an effect on us. And then very importantly, we detail what we will not be testing. And that's the part we often forget. We say, oh yeah, we're going to run through this flow, that flow, and this flow. And like, well, what about these other 18 flows? I find this especially with product who doesn't necessarily get in the day-to-day details. They'll say, well, did you think about the rest of this? What if you didn't think about it? And that's why we detail what we're not going to test, because it tells everyone, yes, I thought about that. I gauged the risk of that, and I said, this is an acceptable risk profile. I don't want to thrash. I don't want to toil. And I want to prioritize going whitewater kayaking and hiking. Wait, no. Work-life balance, that's the phrase. The other piece of this is that testers hold the mental model of the system in our minds. This is one of my favorite phrases about testing. Your testers, we move through the systems in ways that developers and product don't necessarily. We navigate through the flows. We know how it's supposed to feel. and we hold that model in our minds. So we're very anxious. Like I spend my days just being anxious at different people and having them talk me down a little bit because that's what I do. I'm anxious. I have this model. I know that if we make this change, that's going to happen. If we do this, that's going to happen. And not everyone else sees that, so I have to kind of be the keeper of it. And I'm the keeper of the risk profile. And we're going to talk about that in a second. When we go through this method, when we start talking about all of these things, you're helping me update my mental model. You're helping me look at my risk profile and say, oh, okay, this is risky, this is not risky, this is why, this is that, this is that. It's our gut instinct. It's all of these things that are kind of bringing us together to really have a great experience as far as getting software out. I do see a comment online that says, I don't buy that more testing equals more risk. Colin, I would love to talk to you more about that later. It is a time thing. If we're spending a lot of time between when the item is developed and when we release it, if the testing cycle is very, very long, you've moved on. You're not going to be thinking about the feature you wrote 3 weeks ago, and if it's taking me 3 weeks to test it, that is not beneficial for anyone, because I'll come back to you and I'll say, hey, this doesn't work, and you're going to have to be like, did I write that? Was that me? I've written test automation that I've come back to 6 months later and thought, that is code you could have written. So more testing, more time between when we do the thing and when we release the thing increases our risk. And if we are not thoughtfully testing and we're just kind of thrashing and toiling, that's where the increase in risk comes from. Okay, so how do we express that? If y'all are still on board, thank you very much, and thanks for not walking out of the room. How do we express this good enough testing, this do as little testing as possible when we hit upgrades? Because we have to test everything, right? What if it goes wrong? Clutch my pearls. I'm not even wearing pearls and I'm clutching them. Apparently, we're just going to randomly flip through our slides. That's cool. Okay, spoiler alert, this isn't going to be a radical shift. This is not some crazy thing where I'm like, okay, first we get the unicorn, and then we win. The major difference here is who we're talking to, how we're talking to them, what we're saying, and what kind of test artifacts we're creating to help cement our place as the subject matter experts in, well, technology. We're going to talk about adding nuance to the ways we talk to each other. We're going to talk a little bit about adding nuance to our testing and saying the things we're not testing. That piece is so important. I cannot say that enough. We cannot just say we're testing X. We also have to say we're not testing Y, Z, or A for these reasons. I'm going to say that a bunch, y'all. So we start with the changelog, right? A new thing has come out. It is shiny, it is new, it is amazing. What are you going to do? We're going to read about it. Hopefully everybody likes to read here because those bad boys are long. And this is what you're doing anyway. You're sitting down, you're reading it, you're getting excited, you're getting hype. Like, oh my gosh, look at the cool stuff that's coming out. Look at these changes, look at all this stuff. Talk to me about it. This is the point that is the most important. Okay, they're all important. So when I look at a changelog, I see, oh my gosh, look at all these things. Good heavens, that is so many words. There's like 12 things here. And I, as a tester, and let's be honest, I, as a manager, don't have that much hands-on experience with our Elixir code, with our backend, with our front end even. Mobile, I'm pretty good at. So I don't understand it. I understand the words. I know what it says, but I don't understand how that's expressed in our code base. And if you can sit down with me and say, hey, Jen, let's go through this thing, let's talk about it. Okay, not us, definitely us. That's going to be us in about 6 months when it gets actually depreciated. And have these conversations. So I want to hear what's going on and how that's going to affect my testing. What do you see in this that's important? What do you see in this that's interesting? Communicate that to me. It's so important. A lot of times, I'm going to stereotype for just a little bit, so Feel free to come at me afterwards. I find that sometimes when my developers are reading something, they read it very quickly and they say, these 4 things, put those in the trash. Don't need them. Not going to think about them again. And they're like, okay, that's handled. I'm so good at this. And then I, as a tester, come back and I'm like, well, what about these 4 things? They just said you have to have a pony to be able to use this. I don't have a pony. They're like, oh, yeah, we don't use that. Tell me that. Just tell me that. Don't tell me that, because I would be so disappointed if I thought I was getting a pony and I wasn't getting a pony. And each thing that we've decided is going to affect us, we're going to start talking about its risk profile. I've got a few questions that we're going to go through to really determine risk. If you have seen any of my other talks, they basically boil down to risk bad, talk good. This one does the same thing. So when you're looking at something, you really have to determine the risk. Is it worth it to pet that soft, fluffy tummy? You can't see the scar, but yes, it is worth it. So our first question is, what if we get it right? This is your hype man, hype woman, hype human moment. I want to be just as excited about this as anyone else. I want you to tell me what cool stuff is happening. What is interesting? What makes you excited? I want to sit down at your table at lunch, and I want you to be like, Jenny, my gosh, you have to hear about this cool thing. And I'm going to be like, I didn't understand that, but I'm glad you're happy. I want you to get me excited. Because if I'm excited and product is excited, suddenly this isn't a dark thing. This isn't something bad that's happening to us. This is something where we are getting better. We're getting more engaged with our ecosystem, more engaged with our network. And it's so much fun. Have you sat down with somebody who has a real passion for a thing you know nothing about and asked them about it? It's delightful. It is so delightful. And that's what I want from you. I want that excitement. I want that happiness. I want that joy. And if you don't have joy in your job, I understand it. We're hiring. The next thing I want to ask is, and this is a hard one to phrase, because the question is really, what if you get it wrong? The question here is, what if we miss something? How is that going to look? What should I be seeing? Are there going to be more errors? Is there going to be a new type of error? Is something random not going to work? Are there going to be no buttons? React Native. Still mad about that one. All the buttons went away, y'all. It was ridiculous. So talk to me about this. Talk to me. Okay, we said that this item here we're not going to care about. We don't care about it. It doesn't affect us. What if it did? If it's used in some weird thing done by Bob, who's been gone for 10 years, what would I see? Would I see that? So get me an idea of what's going on. And it is sometimes hard to think about what if I did it wrong, what if we did it wrong, what if we missed something. But it's a really important question to ask ourselves, because that starts giving us more confidence. Well, okay, so I see these 3 things. If we missed a piece on this, then that's just going to affect this small part of the website. Okay, that's an acceptable risk. And it says, not only can I think about the things that excite me, but I can also have the hard conversations about what does it look like if we mess up? What does it look like if we introduce a bug? And that lets me decide what, or start talking about what's more risky. If I know what's going to happen whenever something goes wrong, then I can say, okay, that's acceptable. We're going to do less testing in that area because it's less risky. We're going to focus on this other, bigger, riskier area, but we know what to keep an eye out for in case something does go sideways. And I love that. The other piece that I think is kind of important there is, if it does go badly, how do we fix it? Is it something we could potentially release to production? Or is this kind of a showstopper moment? Because that does change your risk profile. And that's our last question, or our next question is, do we care? Do we care if we miss this piece? How vital is it to us? How important is it? Is it in the billing modules? Okay, probably important, just a little bit. Is it in something cosmetic? Way less important. And that's something you have to think about. Computer. That's something you have to think about whenever you're doing anything, but it's very important in these sorts of moments, in part because people are going to freak out. And a lot of this, sorry y'all, is human management and human emotional management. I'm very good at that, so I will help, I promise. Anytime a dev says something like, oh, that doesn't matter, and then refuses to elaborate, I get very anxious, and it suddenly matters a lot to me. And it's not because I don't trust y'all. Okay, maybe a little. The last piece of this is, how do we monitor and observe? How do we take what we've done and monitor and observe what we've got? Because upgrades should change us. Code should change us. Anything we release to production should change us. Does it make us faster? Does it make us slower? Do we see fewer errors? Do we see more errors? Is someone able to do something they weren't able to do before? Everything we release to production should change us, and every change to production should be monitorable and observable. The major part of this is stop throwing things over the wall. Don't throw things over the wall to production. This is something that I've seen as a really bad habit is we say, oh, we're done with this. Fly free. Then we never look at it again until something goes wrong. When we're talking about upgrades, again, we're trying to build trust. We're trying to build trust in our organization and trust in ourselves as technologists. So we want to make sure that we know when it went to production. And I can say, hey, Sam, guess what? We just increased our performance by da-da-da-da-da because we made this upgrade. And he's like, wow, that's cool. And suddenly I'm less terrified of upgrading things. Good job, team. Yep. Sorry, my iPad is a little bit of, I just said that, we're cool. Ta-da! Risk profile. So we want to know, what if this goes well? What if this goes poorly? Do we care about it? And how are we going to look at it on production? How are we going to take a moment on production and say, hey, is this cool or not, y'all? Because sometimes it's not cool, and that's okay. The next piece is to craft scenarios. This is what I was talking about whenever I was talking earlier about the good enough testing. You want to make sure that you're pulling the scenarios together that make sense for what we're doing. We don't want to test too much. We want to test very little. We want to be incredibly mindful. Stephen, I just read your comment online, so yes, we want to be incredibly mindful about testing. We want to do as little as possible. Sure, there's going to be, like, you're going to run through your golden path. You might run through some alternative paths, but we really want our base set of scenarios to be something that is very small and very actionable. Okay, now there it goes. The next piece is to defend yourselves. He does not like his Pete's touched. When I say defend yourselves, what I mean is we have made decisions. We are very good at our jobs. You are here because you want to be better at your jobs. And you should be able to justify all of the decisions you make. This is a moment for you to start moving into a senior mindset, moving into more of a partnership and collaboration with everyone else. I as a tester, you as the developer, she is the product owner, he is the designer, should be able to sit down and say, okay, I know why Jenny made these decisions. And I can trust that. And if you do this over and over and over, they're going to stop asking because they're going to assume, oh yeah, Jenny knows what she's doing. She's so cool. We love Jenny. This is going to help cement you as a subject matter expert. Fear comes from unknowns. Fear comes from not knowing if we can rely on somebody, if we can trust them, and you can show yourself to be trustworthy by doing this, by explaining yourself. It can be so annoying. You have to go over and over and over. But if you write it down, you can just point them to the Notion doc, and that's way better. These can be really scary. People are easily spooked by upgrades. And they shouldn't be. Like, it shouldn't be that scary, but we've made it scary Because we say things like do it all, test everything, et cetera, and that's not what we need to do. This is one of the ways we started introducing that nuance. We're talking about not testing everything. We're talking about crafting scenarios. We're talking about really looking at the things we're doing and using that to make something very small, very actionable, and very beautiful, I think. This is how we de-risk upgrades. This is how we take ourselves from a place of fear, we take our teams from this place of fear into a place of safety and knowingness and collaboration. I will say collaboration about 10 more times, just like if you've got a bingo card, put it on there. All right, we're going to recap real quick, and then we're going to do questions. Do less testing. Craft thoughtful, intentional scenarios. Describe what we aren't testing and why. Embrace minimalism, says the girl with like 400 tchotchkes. Communicate more. Share your plans. Defend your plans. Make sure people understand why we're here, why we're doing this. And give people a reason to trust you. All right, kids and kittens, that's the talk. I hope it was amazing. If you've got